evening and welcome to this regularly scheduled meeting of the Sahuarita Unified School District Governing Board. I want to thank our community tonight for joining us this evening. We do want to remind our live audience this evening, though, that we do live stream these meetings and sound carries in this room. So please, side conversations need to be kept at a minimum. If you do find yourself needing to have an extended side conversation, we invite you to please utilize the lobby and then come back in when you've done that. That helps keep the meeting run smoothly for staff and board members. Thank you so much for your cooperation. It's truly appreciated. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Moving on to the roll call, Ms. Palacios.
Governing Board President Denise Reese.
Here.
Governing Board Clerk Dr. John Sparks.
Here.
Governing Board Member Sherry Lowell.
Here.
Governing Board Member Kevin Opalka.
Here.
Governing Board Member Nicole Warner. Absent. District Administration Superintendent Dr. Manuel Valenzuela.
Present.
Assistant Superintendent Scott Downs.
Present.
Assistant Superintendent Brett Bonner.
Here.
Chief Financial Officer Lisette Huey.
Here.
Thank you, Ms. Palacios. Moving on to approval of the agenda, Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, Madam President Reese, members of the board, I'd recommend approval of the revised agenda as it was presented this evening.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. The next item is approval of the minutes. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, Madam President Reese and members of the board. You have in your packet draft copies of the minutes from the regularly scheduled meeting of the board way back on August 10th, 2022. And after review and consideration, I would recommend approval as presented.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. The next item is ratification of the vouchers. Ms. Huey.
Good evening. Tonight I recommend payroll vouchers number 3 and 3.1, new payroll number 7, new payroll number 8, for a total payroll of $7,357,443.91. Additionally, I recommend expense vouchers 1111 through 1012 and new expense vouchers from 1023 to 1030 for total expense vouchers of $16,510,941.46, and that means a grand total of both payroll and expense ratification of $23,868,385.37.
We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to the superintendent reports. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, President Reese, members of the board. Just a couple of points to share. One is we always start with our enrollment reports. So as you can see, the year is young, hence only a couple of data points, these first couple of meetings. But if you look at the trend lines, you do see that pattern of growth. And if you see that little chart, that little table, I guess you would call it, you can see that just from the last meeting, we are up 43 students. The different cells are green, basically. And so we are moving in a slow and steady upward trajectory, rapidly approaching 6,400 students, currently sitting at 6,358. We know that those numbers historically don't stabilize till about Labor Day, when kind of the dust settles with people coming in and out of state. But that's an encouraging sign. I'm also pleased to share, I don't know if the board has heard, and it was pretty significantly publicized by the Arizona Department of Education and Superintendent Hoffman's office, that they have, through I believe federal still COVID relief funds, they're providing a teacher support, classroom support, where teachers can put in for $600 to get supplies and needed enhancements for the classroom. But it's not easy. It's not as easy as it sounds, because like everything, there's a procedure that's got to be followed. And I want to thank Lizette. They're going through Donors Choose, which is a great tool. We've used it before for fundraisers and things like that. But it does have some logistical hoops and challenges, and we've navigated them. And so teachers are now able to tap into these resources, and it's really a great opportunity to get dollars in the classroom. Also, I want to thank Scott Downs for his initiative as part of our ongoing, never-ending, relentless quest to keep our schools as safely as possible. Literally, as we speak, I can tell you that we've implemented new access control systems at 3 of our schools, and the other 3 are forthcoming, or 4, or whatever the difference is, are forthcoming within the next couple of weeks, I would assume, Scott. And these are video and intercom systems that keep the doors during the school day, the perimeter door, locked until somebody's gotten a visual ID and invited to come in. So it's a challenging year, but I would say that we are moving in a positive direction, and there's lots to be thankful for, lots of daily signs of normalcy and programs and academics and activities. First football game, I think, is a week from Friday for both teams. Sahuarita's at home, and then the next week, I think they're both at home. So more exciting Friday nights here in Sahuarita, and I'm just thrilled that the school year's off to such a positive start. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Moving on to the governing board reports. Ms. Lowell.
No report.
Okay. Dr. Sparks?
Just visiting schools, and as the school year gets moving, I'm just grateful to see the kind of overt positive perspective a lot of people are having. I know, especially as we kind of still manage that kind of return to normalcy, and I'm grateful for the, well, frustration I can understand too, but also positive comments as we continue to struggle to staff busing and fill some of the vacancies. And I know we're not the only organization around trying to fill positions, but I know some of those changes and structures cause disruption and they're hard. But overall, everybody I've talked to has just been positive. They understand that we're working our best to try to fill those positions, and I'm grateful for that. Just grateful to have the school year rolling, and hear and see the bands out on the practice fields, and the football team's going, and I just think it's great. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Alpaca.
Yeah, after our last meeting, we had our luncheon over at Anza, and it was great to get an opportunity to talk to Mrs. Robinson and the rest of the staff over there, and visit some classrooms and see the kids back in class, and all the creativity and the decorations that are around the school, and the efforts that the PTO have done over there are just phenomenal. And also had an opportunity to participate in the family fun night that they had over there. Learned how to play bunco. I'd never played before. That was a fun adventure. I think the kids had a lot of fun playing bingo, and seeing friends outside of the classroom and getting to interact with more of the community. So it was a really good time. So encourage everybody to keep an ear to the ground for those events that go on. There's lots of opportunities to get involved with the school, and just be on the lookout for those.
Perfect. Thank you. And for mine, I would just sort of like to echo that classrooms seem to be operating really well. I am seeing sort of a bounce back in my own students to sort of their return to liking school, and so that's always a positive thing. So just thank you again to teachers and staff, site administration. Just it's amazing, and just keep fighting the good fight, because our kids are noticing that it's positive. So thank you. Recognitions, we don't have any tonight. Call to the public. It's not on here. Okay. Consideration and discussion of comments and concerns from the public. Those wishing to address the governing board may do so at this time or at the board's discretion at the time the item appears on the agenda. All speakers are requested to hold their comments to 2 minutes or less. 20 minutes will be allowed for both online and in-person comments. In accordance with the Arizona Open Meeting Law, board members may not respond, comment, or ask questions of speakers regarding issues not on the agenda. Any comments not read during this agenda item will still be entered into the public record. Dr. Sparks, how many speakers do we have this evening?
We have one live and one online comment.
Okay, then we shall proceed with the protocols as outlined. Dr. Sparks, please call our first speaker.
First speaker tonight is Jill Fabian.
Grant for another 3 years to provide the community with prevention activities for our youth, to look at the concerns of alcohol and substance abuse and how it affects the brain and the activities of youth in our community. We recently opened up an office, and we're very excited that we'll be doing most of our activities in person. Starting with this Saturday, we're offering a free movie at the Sahuarita movie theater at 1 p.m. We hope you come out and support our prevention efforts. And we will be talking about trauma-informed care after the movie concludes. We also want to let the audience know about our Strengthening Families program. This helps the whole family. We do focus on youth 13 and up, and just one youth and one parent needs to come. If the family needs childcare because they have younger siblings, we have that available also. We feed the family. The program is for 10 weeks, starting September 6th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. All of our information can be seen on our website at serenityfirstcounseling.com. Thank you for letting me be here this evening.
Thank you.
We have one online submission from Glenna Harrell. Thank you to the boards, SUSD leadership, teachers, and community members. I admire how each group compromises to make decisions in the best interests of our students. There are still issues that we do not agree on, but everyone works to the benefit of the students. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Next item of business is Intuition Wellness Center Memorandum of Understanding. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, President Reese, members of the board. And in keeping with the message we just heard about community collaboration, finding common ground, and working together to serve not just the mission of the school, but of the whole community, it's my pleasure this evening to share with you a proposal to collaborate with Intuition Wellness, which you will hear about, and the University of Arizona in another win-win proposition that's going to enhance the level of services in mental health, in evaluation, and in service to our students. This evening, we have Ms. Jess Beignet, Director of Student Services, and also Dr. Emery Mahoney, who is one of our school psychologists, who are going to tell us about this proposal. Ladies?
Thank you guys so much for allowing me to speak about this proposal. And for Dr. Valenzuela, thank you for the introduction. I want to start just by giving a brief background about the training of school psychologists and psychologists in general. So when a student is working on their PhD in either clinical counseling or school psychology, most graduate programs require the completion of a 1,500 to 2,000 hour year-long internship, which occurs during generally the last year of graduate training, either simultaneously with the completion of a dissertation or sometimes before or after, just depending on the student's track. And most graduate training, or many graduate training programs in psychology, require students to complete an internship that's either APA accredited, so accredited by the American Psychological Association, or APIC, which is the Association of Psychology Postdoctoral and Internship Centers. And those organizations have set standards that internships must meet in order to be accredited with those organizations. And so because we have so many really well-trained psychology graduate students all over the U.S. and not as many internship sites that are accredited, we tend to have, when we have an APA or APIC accredited internship, a lot of really great applicants that apply for the program. And the University of Arizona has an APIC accredited internship consortium currently operating, and they are working on, they are in the process of becoming APA accredited for their internship program. Currently, that University of Arizona psychology internship has agreements with both Tucson Unified and Sunnyside Unified School Districts. And so our proposed MOU is actually something a little bit unique, particularly in the field of these psychology internship training programs, because we are proposing that we would potentially join that psychology internship training consortium, but actually give the trainees that potentially would be placed in this internship the opportunity to simultaneously get school psychology and clinical psychology experience through a partnership with Intuition Wellness, which is a small community mental health agency. It's really just one office, but offers a lot of services that I'll touch on. And ideally, through this internship, we're going to attract really well-qualified, very well-prepared, well-trained psychologists to serve in our school district and really in Southern Arizona, because what we know right now is particularly for folks who are focused on child mental health services, we just don't have enough psychology trainees, both in the schools and outside of the schools, to service our students and children. Intuition Wellness was founded by Dr. Brandy Baker, who has been a great partner as we've gotten to this step in discussing what this internship could look like. She and myself would serve as the supervisors for this potential intern. Intuition Wellness really is really comprehensive. They offer quite a range of services, family and individual counseling for children, teens, young adults. They offer family therapy, nature programs, homeopathic family medical services, and then also occupational therapy services. So ideally, our intern would have quite a range of experiences and be very well informed about a number of different approaches that can be helpful for students and children. A quick overview of the MOU. So again, this would establish a partnership with Intuition Wellness and work on creating that shared internship training program. Once that was established, Intuition Wellness would then separately establish the partnership with the University of Arizona Psychology Internship Program in order to start the development of a joint internship site. The University of Arizona and the APIC organization dictate things like rate of pay and internship policies, so we would be required to follow those policies. Interns would develop or divide their time equally between Intuition Wellness and within Sahuarita Unified, and Intuition Wellness would be responsible for the direct payment to the intern and offering benefits to the intern, with Sahuarita Unified reimbursing Intuition Wellness for half of those costs on a monthly basis. Again, working really closely with Dr. Baker at Intuition Wellness, we would work on collaboratively interviewing and selecting our intern that we would potentially have, and be equally responsible for things like supervision and providing didactic instruction, which is required by the internship policies, and again, make sure we have a very well-rounded trainee to hopefully join our community. During the time within Sahuarita Unified, some of the things that we would hope that the intern would be involved with include psychoeducational evaluations, group and individual counseling supports for students who have educationally relevant needs, and then providing consultation services to students and staff. Again, just in terms of termination, that's also in the MOU that with at least 180 days notice, either Intuition Wellness or Sahuarita Unified could terminate the agreement, but again, that wouldn't be finalized until the end of the program year, because once we take on an intern, we're committing to a full 1-year experience for them. And again, the execution of the MOU would be dependent on Intuition Wellness becoming a member of the University of Arizona's Psychology Internship Consortium. And that's what I've got for you.
Do you have any questions for Dr. Mahoney? The only thing I can say is this is a win-win-win for all of us. We all know about staffing shortages. We know about the critical nature of mental health needs. It's a chance to train the next generation of psychology professionals. It's a chance to provide additional value-added services so that we can be even better at supporting our students. And frankly, it's a chance to share our community, our schools, our culture, our people with people who have an interest in the field and in this community. So I would, we've reviewed it. It's the nuts and bolts are exactly as Dr. Mahoney mentioned it. Basically, we pay for half the cost. We'd reimburse in tuition. And pending all the contingencies, I think it's a winner for us and for everybody concerned. So I would recommend agreement of the Intuition Wellness Center Memorandum of Understanding as it's contained in your packet and as it was presented.
We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Madam President.
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney, will the intern be on our site 40 hours a week? Is that is the goal? Or roughly, I mean.
Yes, I think it actually works out with when we factor in things like didactics that they have to take and supervision time. It really works out to about 2 to 2.5 days here, and then 2 to 2.5 days at Intuition Wellness. So it would be a little bit less than 40 hours a week, or it would be half of 40 hours a week here, and then the other half at Intuition Wellness.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious. I mean, I agree that this is at the end of the day, we can sit around and express our concerns about not having providers and not having options and opportunities and services. But if we're going to say that, we better be willing to step up and allow our, to train that next group. I know in my practice, I have a University of Arizona student with me 300 days a year or something. I mean, it's a lot. And that allows that next generation to learn and grow and to be able to gain the skills necessary to be successful in practice. And so I'm grateful that this is, I was like, oh, how about 2? Right? I mean, but I
like what you're thinking.
Yeah. Just because I know that it's so hard. And on top of that, COVID, I mean, we blame a lot of things on COVID, but the reality is we're seeing that like on the NP side, there's just a lot of sites that used to be there have still not opened back up. And so we're really struggling to find placements at times. So I'm grateful that this opportunity is here.
Thank you.
I just had a quick question as to what the timeline is looking like. Is this something that we're hoping to be able to implement for this school year, or is the timeline or the acceptance into the University of Arizona's consortium happening this year and then would hopefully start 23, 24?
Yeah, that's correct. Just depending on how quickly we can get things moving and how quickly the internship consortium moves. So ideally it would be the start of 23, 24, but worst case scenario might not be until the following year, just depending on their timeline and some of the paperwork we would need to complete on our side as well.
Okay, and so the approval of the MOU, is that part of what has to take place in order for, okay, got it. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you so much
Thank you.
to both of you for the work that you've put into this and bringing it to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item of business is our public online auction items. Dr. Valenzuela.
Once again, you have a list of items that have exhausted their useful life, and we request that they be put up as authorized for public auction.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next item of business is RFQ 2022-1, additional architectural services. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. President Reese, members of the board, if this particular RFQ looks familiar to you, you are correct. This item was with us within the last few meetings that we've had, and we awarded the RFQ to Swayman Associates for architectural services, and they're already hard at work on this next major project, which is the expansion of facilities for high school enrollment, growth, and space. This is an amendment to that. It's basically a request to authorize not to exceed $10,000. The firm, Kevin Barber and the folks at Swaim, to consult with us, as we are always trying to be ahead of the curve, forward thinking about assessing and planning for needs in a comprehensive and visionary way. We're in the process of evaluating all of our schools. A lot of our schools are older, and we're trying to keep up to the current and future proficiencies and standards. And so we want to get a thorough assessment of needs, facilities, things that need to be renewed, things that need to be enhanced, things that need to be built. And we need consultation of architects so that we can really formulate a more crystal, more than general picture of what those needs are. Of course, we'll be engaging the community in that process as well. But this is authorization for the utilization of the Swaim architectural firm to help us with that process, not to exceed $10,000. I think it's wise and prudent investment of dollars, and I'd recommend your approval at this time.
We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item C, RFQ 2022-2, Construction Manager at Risk Services. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, President Reese, members of the board and public. This is Construction Manager at Risk, specifically in regards to the contractor for delivery of the SFB project at our two high schools, Walden Grove and Sahuarita. It's about an $18 million total project that is funded by the Arizona School Facilities Board. As part of this process, the district is required to go through a very comprehensive, very meticulous, very methodical process that involves sealed bids for the job, qualifications of the contractor, various aspects of background and the work, review of those bids, paper screening of the bids, scoring of the bids, interviewing of the qualified contractors, and finally awarding the RFQ. I can tell you that as required, all of the I's were dotted and T's were crossed. Scott and Lizette worked very diligently to implement all steps. They worked closely in collecting these bids, processing them. They had a committee that met with the proposed construction companies. The committee consisted of senior school staff. It included the architect, specifically Kevin Barber from Swayman Associates, our facilities director, and our own, well, it's not our own, but the SFB's own liaison to the Sahuarita Unified School District. We went through this process. I think it was a robust process. They got multiple wonderful proposals. But at the end of the day, through this process, there was a consensus that emerged from all of the independent evaluations. And I believe in your packet you have the scorecards to recommend this RFQ 2022-2 Construction Manager at Risk to Core Construction. As the board is aware, Core Construction has provided services to the Sahuarita Unified School District on multiple occasions. I like to say their fingerprints are on, I believe, Walden Grove, the ECC, Copperview Elementary, the Aquatic Center, and most recently, Wrightson Ridge School. And I think that was one of the themes that I heard when I was briefed by my staff about the recommendation, is that not only is CORE very familiar with the as-builts, the SFB. They have much experience doing SFB work, the criteria, and the technical aspects of doing the work, and the work that they've done for us, I would say, speaks for itself. But in addition to that, just getting to know and establish relationships with the senior leadership of this organization, I can tell you that these folks are embedded as part of the fabric and the culture that defines SUSD and Sahuarita. They care. And so I think it is a strong recommendation. And for all those points, and after conclusion of this complete process, I am pleased this evening to recommend the awarding of RFQ 2022-2 Construction Manager at Risk Services to Core Construction.
We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Madam President,
Yes.
I just say I would expect the same consistent high-level performances we've seen in the past. Is all I have to say.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I would too.
Anything else?
Just excited that, you know, we have an opportunity to provide additional space at both
Yeah.
high schools, addressing some of those needs for, you know, what we would call our extracurriculars and also traditional classroom spaces. So very excited to move forward with this and expand our campuses.
Fantastic. Any other discussion? Okay. Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Madam President,
Yes.
we do have Ryan Knapp is here.
Oh, fantastic.
From Core Construction. I don't know, Ryan, if you care to say any words. You're here, present. Thank you. So we'd
Yes.
certainly
Thank you for joining
welcome
us.
your comments if you have any.
The opportunity. We really appreciate the relationship that we have with the district. We love being a part of this community. We have graduates of Sahuarita High School on our payroll. We have a few very proud parents that are very excited. Our superintendent on our last project for you all has a daughter at SIS, another daughter at SHS, and so they're very, very excited to get going on this.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Dr. Valenzuela. May I make one comment real quick?
Yes, sir.
I did want to mention in the process of selecting the three candidates, you know, it's always easy to select somebody that you've used before. And not only the projects that Dr. Valenzuela has articulated, but they have their fingerprints on about 70% of the buildings on this main campus as well, which also lent itself to working with somebody who already knows where the pipes are, I mean, it was just a no-brainer. But the one thing I wanted to stay in specific was Bill, who is our SFB liaison, works with a lot of construction teams. And he said from the beginning, the three construction teams that have bid this, you're going to go wrong with none of them. But when the scoring was done, he specifically, and he voted for Core, he specifically said Core brought their A game. They did not bring your relationship for granted, and they knocked the interview out of the park. They really put their best step forward again, and so they didn't take it for granted, thinking, well, they've worked with the district before and we're going to get it again. So I was really appeased through that process that even an outsider and somebody as knowledgeable from the SFB had picked Core as the first one and made that specific comment. So I'm very excited about the recommendation and your guys' decision. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. No, I'm excited to see that construction get started. So
We should see
Thank
dirt
you.
flying, I heard, by the late fall, early winter. Okay. We'll look forward to it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
All right. Moving on. Policy advisory, JLDAB, referrals to other agencies. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, President Reese, members of the board. If you think back to the last meeting where we tabled this, this is the required policy that a board is obligated to have in place if they are implementing the provisions of the state law that's commonly referred to as Jake's Law. And this is in consideration of the growing and the significant need for mental health services. I believe the legislature, in their wisdom, desired that no child who was in need of mental health services would go without because of ability to pay or insurance or stuff like that. So what it allows is, it allows for the service provider, the agencies, including school referrals, to bill the Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System, access for those services. And in talking with Jess Banier, I learned that when this law was first passed in 2020, in the 2020 session, we immediately started taking advantage of this opportunity. Our social worker, Lee Berkey, last year, we were responsible for 39 referrals for services, which makes you ponder the need. It also makes you grateful that we have people that are focused and committed to making those referrals. Of course, some of these students, if they have private insurance, that's fine, but some of them didn't, and this was an avenue that allowed those services to be delivered. The only thing that's not included in those 39, just for your point of information, is that some of these, Ms. Berkey told me that some of these kids were referred directly through the Crisis Response Center. I guess everybody has acronyms. They call it the CRC, I guess. And a lot of those go through directly through law enforcement. So those aren't included. So these are 39 that were initiated by the school. And so we're grateful and we're glad to implement the policy. If you read the policy basically says that we will cooperate, that we will work with parents and facilitate their filling out the required forms and conduct post-surveys and submit them to the state and provide the reports, which we're glad to do if it gets kids the services that they need. So this is read number 2. So at this point, I would recommend your approval of the noted policies JLDAB and the corresponding regulation JLDAB-R as presented.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. So, policy revision, IIE, student schedules and course loads. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, President Reese, members of the board. I'd like to begin by thanking our members of the board for your engagement and what I think is the execution of your duties as overseers of policy. That's at the forefront of what boards do. And way back in the spring, it was brought to my attention that we had a policy that, with good intentions, but nonetheless, was not currently congruent with how we were practicing, and so that we needed to update it. So we've had conversations. If you think back, I guess it was late spring, this was brought forth as kind of an amendment regarding student schedules and course loads, and it was tabled. And so it's brought back this evening for your action or additional consideration. In a nutshell, what the policy has to do with is how many classes we require high schoolers to take, is basically what it is. And really, I don't think anything's changed in our compass or in our orientation. For a lot of reasons, we want students to maximize their enrollment in classes. I mean, I tell people this is the last free education you're going to get. Take full advantage of it. We want to make sure you have enough credits to graduate. We want to make sure that if you're going to college that you meet all of those ABOR or out-of-state requirements. So we're very conscious of that. So generally, we do still say that we want high school students to take at least 6 classes. If you're a senior, at least 5 classes. However, we know that a lot of things are not concrete. They're not just clear cut. And we know that every student is an individual and every student has a unique journey. And a lot's changed. If you look at when this policy was last adopted or revised, a lot's changed. First of all, thanks to Brett's efforts and our principals and our teachers and Pima College, our kids are having access to higher level, high school level academic courses at a much earlier age. I mean, we've got dozens of kids at the middle school level that are taking high school math and other courses, languages. So that's changed. The other thing that's changed is we have young people who take advantage of outstanding career and technical education programs that provide industry level credentials. They save them and their families money in terms of post-secondary credentials that they'd otherwise pay for after high school. And So we need to have some latitude to make individual decisions when, for example, the example I always use is when a student's taking a CTE course in cosmetology, which is like in the thousands of hours, and they have to drive into Tucson 5 days a week for 3 or 4 hours a night. We got to have some flexibility if they're otherwise in good standing to not force the issue that they have to take this maximum or minimum number of classes. So if it's okay, I'd just like to read the way this sits right now, and if it reflects where you think we're at, I'd recommend you approve it. If we need to discuss and further amend, of course, we're open to do whatever would be the pleasure of the board. But as it sits right now, and I will admit it's even amended a little bit since the last time we tabled it, but here it is. It shall be the responsibility of the principal, with the cooperation of assigned counselors, to assist students in the scheduling of classes. All students in high school except graduating seniors are required to enroll in a minimum of 6 classes. Graduating seniors will generally be required to enroll in a minimum of 5 classes, and then separate paragraphs, so stand alone. Individual considerations may be given to enroll in less than the standard requirement upon specific, unique circumstances. So that's it. I think it reflects what we are currently doing, and I would recommend your approval at this time.
We have a recommendation. Yeah. Yes.
I always forget if it's green or red on these things. I'd like to make a motion that we do not accept the amendment as currently presented, and that we step back and take a further look at managing more broadly the expectations for all years and of study. So my reasoning behind that is that while I agree, if I look around the state, many districts have this policy, and it says in most of those districts 5. And I understand the background of why it says that, but I also am concerned that while I'm generally opposed to overly detailed minutia from a board policy, I'm concerned that the overly broad can be option in this policy does not leave any room for conflict resolution where the principal has decided one thing and the family and student feel something different, or the student and the counselors feel one thing and the principal does not, or the principals and the students don't and the counselors do not. My concern is that we are meeting the needs of the students, and I think this has come up. I was part of that original reason that it came up, and since then I've had conversations with numerous families about this, how we manage this expectation, and I think I generally am supportive of the 5, but I'm also and the leeway as necessary for CTE or a student that has completed significant numbers of their course load and don't need 5 as a senior, which I think happens more than we realize. It definitely happens more today than it did 10 years ago. And I know that, so that's my concern. Because I know, talking to a student that was in this position, ended up taking 2 PE classes senior year to meet the 5 requirement and didn't need that PE class. Now, didn't have a bad time, but does that make sense? I'm supportive of that, but that's how I feel, and so that's the motion I make. I don't know if anybody else feels the same, but so that's the motion I make and the reasoning I made the motion.
So we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I need clarification of what the actual motion was. Is it to table it? Sorry,
No.
or is it to
It's to not accept it. and
leave it
then
as is?
To
leave it as is, and then come back and have a broader conversation about adjusting this. There's actually a whole section in this policy, not just this specific section, but there is other verbiage in our policies about course loads and so I just want to make sure we're addressing it more completely, that when those expectations, because it really is, right now it can be given I'm going to be direct. I think that it's not always given when it should be, and so I want to make sure there's some clarity in there, that not a overly minute control, but just I want people to know. I want parents to be able to read this policy and say, okay, I know when I can ask to take 4, and whether they people agree or don't agree, or I think there needs to be that clarity. Right now, that clarity is not there, and I think we need that, if that makes sense. So not accept it as is, and then come back and readdress it more fully to meet those, to allow a more delineated conversation between families and schools.
So, okay, yeah, yeah. So taking into consideration the graduation requirements is basically what you're saying. Really look at that, and I mean, if a student has the 22 units.
Yeah, so they're going into their senior year and they need 2 classes, or they need 4 classes, but they're being required to take 5. Especially there's just a lot more students than we used to. I think it used to be that most kids took the entire 4 years to get it done. I mean, I had a graduate last year who needed 2 his senior year and could have done them in summer school.
And it's because they were taking classes at junior high school classes and junior high.
Yeah, multiple high school classes.
And summer school, which can really add those credits up. And so it shouldn't be subjective.
Okay.
When they come to their senior year, it's kind of like the student should be able to drive their own train and say, this is what I want to do.
For clarity's purposes, and so that we can take the banner and run with it and kind of manage expectations and do what the board would like. Am I hearing you say, what I'm hearing you say, if I understand correctly, is that what's missing is a more explicit, albeit not minutia, is what I heard you say, Dr. Sparks, and I understand that, but some kind of concise criteria that defines when a student can go specifically below 5 classes? Okay.
Yes.
And you're talking about things like credits, if they have a certain number of credits, if they're taking an otherwise like a CTE class. Are there any other major bullet points that come to mind that you think need to be incorporated in that?
The other thing that was mentioned in his motion was the specific looking at for any grade level. So, for example, if we have a freshman that's coming in with 3 or 4 credits already towards their freshman year, and they want to only take 5 because they've got this cool opportunity to do a half-day sports whatever. It's being able to take this policy and allow for exceptions regardless of grade level, as long as they're on track.
So it's still back to less than the maximum. So
Yeah.
6 is the norm for undergraduates, but maybe 5 might be appropriate based on the example like you cited, Ms.
Yeah.
Reese, or like Dr. Sparks said, if somebody is a senior and meets that basic criterion, that they could take 4. And basically laying out what that is as opposed to leaving it more general, which frankly policies tend to be.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that. I mean, we're still in the middle of the motion, and I'm okay with that. But because ultimately the motion could fail. If no one wants to second it, or everybody says no at the end. But to add on to what Denise is expressing is that ultimately, I think as a whole, the standard is 6. But the reality is that we have many students that are coming into our high school system, especially, that are coming into high school with 3 high school credits already out of the way, so they only need 19, right?
Yeah.
Or 18,
Yeah.
sorry, because they need 21 technically.
22.
Oh, it's 22, I forget.
Yeah.
It was 21 way back when, now it's 22. I keep forgetting. 22, so they need 19,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And if you divide that up into 4 years, it might be they want to take 5, 5, 5, and 4 because they have an opportunity to participate in some program at their church, at their school, at their parents' ranch, they want to do Pima classes every afternoon because that's what they want to do. They want to, and I'm not saying what that is. I just think that we need to make sure that under the allowable law of the state, we are generally expressing 6 is the standard, but when can students go below that, if that makes sense? And I do agree, because I think students, this goes back to my concern about flexibility going forward. We're going to need to be able to to offer a broader range of flexible services over time. And we might have a student that shows up and says, oh, by the way, I didn't just do 3 in middle school, I did a 4th in the summer, and so I only did 18, and I want to, I could see them breaking that up. Now, I understand funding has to be taken into consideration, and I don't think anybody is opposed to that, right? No one's saying we have to care about that funding level at some point, because that's how we fund the school district. But I think there should be a broader context of understanding that parents can go to and say, my child wants that. And so it's only 5 students a year or 10, although I bet over time it gets to be a bigger number. As we move down this path as a nation and a state we're heading down that has increased flexibility in structure, we may have to, we need criteria by which a parent knows I can go and request these things. And this is the reason it is. And ultimately, I don't care if we put some criteria in there and say these are it, and then still say, but if the principal and the assistant superintendent or whoever get together and say, but we're still going to even make a bigger exception because this is what's best for a child, I'm okay with that too. I want a little more clarity, only because I know we are moving into a period of time in education of change that's going to be fast, rapid, and continual, and we need to be flexible and people to understand what's going on. So.
Very well.
I think it's our responsibility to make sure graduation requirements are being met. And if that plan that a parent has or a child has, they come and they say, this is our agenda, this is our PE classes your senior year to check the box off. It doesn't accomplish anything. And so I agree with John about being more flexible with our end goal, that we are responsible for the education. So that we need to do, but we shouldn't take that flexibility away from a parent and a student when they're trying to achieve a different academic goal.
So do you want to clarify your motion?
I move that we do not accept the change that has been presented, and we can discuss it at a future date more openly and publicly, and kind of have move towards that goal of being more clear.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Yes. If we do that, are we prohibiting, are we causing any issues with any current students?
No, ma'am, because remember that certainly since the beginning of my tenure here as superintendent, the policy that's currently in place has been in place and is still in place. So it's kind of the way it was, with opportunity here to take something that provides even more clarity. So we'll take that information, and I'll discuss with you, President Reese, kind of how we'd like to follow up on that re-engagement of the topic, and we will go from there.
Okay,
thank you for the feedback.
Thank you.
Okay, so we still have a motion on the floor to not accept the changes as written and to bring this back at a future date to discuss openly and publicly, with those modifications, bringing ideas and things like that to be brought forth. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of not accepting this amended policy as written with all the other stuff that we've just talked about, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. So we will not accept the policy as written here, and we'll bring it back. Okay.
Just a point of clarification. Alternatively, we could have allowed that to die on the motion, or voted in opposed to that, and it would have killed it as well, right? Okay.
That would be
That
correct.
is correct.
Right,
That's absolutely correct.
Yes.
All right.
We just handled it slightly different, so
Fair enough.
it's good. The ASBA Delegate Assembly agenda. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. President Reese, members of the board and public, this is an annual agenda item from the Arizona School Boards Association. As we know, the Delegate Assembly is coming up rather soon, and they've asked the districts to put this item on the agenda to give the board an opportunity to discuss any direction that it would like or not like to its delegates. I can only tell you, as for the point of information and historical context, that as long as I've been here and even before, the board has historically always moved to authorize the designated delegate to go forward and to make decisions in his or her judgment what is deemed to be in the best interest of the district. So kind of provided that general latitude. So that is this item.
Okay, so we have a recommendation.
There's no recommendation.
No
I'm just-
recommendation?
no,
Sorry. So,
What this is an
Yeah.
opportunity for us to discuss the
Yes. The
the
agenda.
agenda items and
Mhm.
and add any additional information for, I believe you are our delegate
Yes.
at the assembly to speak on our behalf. So it's just an opportunity for us to speak as a board about any areas of here that are our concern beyond what's written.
okay.
So.
And then does anybody have anything for that then?
In years past, I know I've been a proponent of funding the full day kindergarten. I believe they've adjusted one of the items on here to provide full time funding for preschool programs in the K-12 funding formula as well. So additionally, they're trying to get some additional resources for families to get children in programs and help the education start at an earlier age. I know that there's a big difference between kids in programs like LINK or the Early Childhood Development Center and maybe kids who are just at home with mom and dad or with one parent or maybe a sibling. I know in the past I've heard discussions with teachers around those kids. It's very clear that the kids that are socialized and the ones that weren't, and so this provides some additional funding to allow for earlier socialization if parents wish to go that route. So I'd encourage you to vote in favor of that when that comes up.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else that they're seeing in the agenda that is of concern that we either need to change or make sure goes through?
Since we have a lot of the CTE, that
Yeah.
portion, we're one of the larger districts or participating districts, so
Yeah, because when
make sure.
career and technical education first came into play, it was supposed to be for postgraduates as well, and they've slowly chipped away the funding. It was also originally funded at the 9th grade level as well, and
It's been
I'm
squeezed
not
down.
sure when that change went through, because when I was doing audits for ADE on that, it was, you couldn't even get completer status until you had 3 years, and now we only have 3 years available, which, sorry, blew my mind when I figured that one out. I was like, wait a minute, but it's also been a hot minute since I've done those kinds of audits, so
Okay.
yeah.
I was just going to add, I agree that restoring CT funding to its
Yeah.
full original intended capacity of 9th through 13th, as they call it, right? I think is really critical as we shift and expand our options for students beyond solely academic tracks, because ultimately a lot of students don't find that CT niche until their sophomore or junior year, and we want them to be able to complete those programs
Yep.
as they were intended to be completed. So.
On the agenda, it does say it's interesting, allow the CTEDs to serve students through the age of 21 regardless of graduation status,
Correct.
which is nice. Although, Dr. Valenzuela, it does say on the agenda, increase the compulsory attendance age from 16 to 18 years of age to the attainment of high school diploma or GED before the age of 18. So currently, it's mandatory that you're in school at the age of 16.
Well, I believe that refers to the fact that technically, in accordance to the statutes of the state of Arizona, you can drop out when you turn 16. I think the intention of that is to say you cannot drop out until you hit 18.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's
Or-
trying to change the compulsory like school attendance age to 18 or high school graduation, whichever comes first.
Whichever comes first.
Yeah,
Whichever comes
because
first.
I graduated from high school at 17.
Right.
So
I know that there's some 16-year-olds that can graduate, right? So
Yeah.
that would,
yeah,
Yeah, the goal, this is always a hotly contended item
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
this agenda.
yeah, that's what I
um,
was like.
Because ultimately, actually, the majority of states, you stay in high school till you're 18,
Hmm.
unless you graduate,
Unless you graduate.
right?
Mhm.
And that's what that says, right? It's saying that in Arizona right now, you can stop going to school at 16,
Even if you don't graduate.
even if you don't graduate. And there's always a, there's always a two-sided argument to that. But ultimately, the goal is to the benefits of obtaining some form of high school graduation certificate, whether it be, alternative school, high school, GED, the push to require that. All the studies that I've seen have always shown that the outcomes of an individual's life are significantly improved with that graduation. And so this is an effort to, once you're an adult, you get to make that decision
Right.
at 18, whatever that is, but
Correct.
you need to graduate or turn 18. And there are a fair number across the state. We're pretty blessed here. Our dropout rate's pretty low.
It's true.
But at the same time, in many places in the state, it happens and they know at 16 they don't have to. And parents don't have that, parents, especially a child that's struggling, only has so much sway over a 16-year-old to make them go to school. And so ultimately this puts that back. Yeah, that's why it's on here. Whether
I mean,
you agree with it or not.
Right,
that's
whether
why
it
it's
gets
on
passed or not, but it's less going to be lobbied for.
Mhm.
And then the fully restore the ninth and 13th grade of the CTE, which is great.
Yeah.
Growing up next to Canada and my grandparents all being Canadian, grade 13 is a very common thing. And so it's nice that they're looking to fully fund that as well with CTE.
And you mentioned the 21-year age
Yeah.
allowance, even if they've graduated from high school.
That
And
they can continue the CTE through 21
Yeah.
for funding.
and I think
That makes a big difference.
around the state around the country where that has been implemented, what happens is a student finds that great CET program, like, man, I'm going to do this.
In grade 11 or
and
grade 10. Yeah,
Then
right.
they get a year in or two in, and then the state has in essence lost that funding because they may not have the capacity to go on and finish that program, whether it be heavy equipment operator, AC,
Correct.
CNA,
Correct.
a lot of them that lead to direct employment, and that would allow a student to finish that, and in essence continue and recapture the expended funds. And if you look at it from that perspective, it's not, they're out of high school, they're out of luck. We really do want people that decided, even at the last minute, like, hey man, this is really what I finally figured out what I want to do on the start of the program, to be able to finish that, because as a state we've lost that benefit of a year or two of education because they may not be able to finish it.
Well, and then the other thing that actually allows for is there's certain numbers of the certifications that you can start preparing for, but you're not even eligible to earn until you're 18 or
That
older.
That is correct.
It also
And
does.
so what this would allow for is again,
I think it's
allow
really
those kids that have started a program, but allow them to actually complete the program with their certifications to move on and directly into the workplace with their certifications in hand.
Heavy
huge-
equipment's a perfect example. You cannot get many of those certifications
Till you're
until you're
18.
18.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're
It's a
not.
huge thing to advocate for.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So I think in general,
Yeah.
uh,
I agree.
would negatively affect our district, and we kind of straddle this line of, are we rural-ish
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
or are we,
Yeah.
urban,
Suburban.
and so there's some of these things where even the stuff for the rural school districts, completely agree with advocating for it and getting them on the agenda, our political agenda for ASBA to go forward and advocate at the state level for it. So,
And
yeah.
I think it probably is good to state that this document doesn't come out of an individual in an office. Like this is, you know, representatives from literally every corner of the state, inner city, rural, and they get in the room and hash it out. Like it can be kind of ruckus, and they figure out how to come to an agreement ultimately to make this document as expansive, as cover the needs of the state.
Yeah, as inclusive as possible. And then, yeah. So I would just ask that if anybody has anything specific about wording or anything, just shoot me an email so that I've got it with me when we go into this session.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Next item is Legendary Teacher Day. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am, President Reese, members of the board. This has now become an annual tradition, but I think that one that our board would be desire to continue supporting. It's basically the brainchild of our friend and colleague, Dr. Nicholas Clement, the former superintendent in Flowing Wells District and current Ernest McFarland Professor of Education at NAU. And really it's simple. It's just designed to take a day to shine a light on those great teachers that we've all had in our lives and to take a moment to overtly and simply tell them thank you. And so if I may, I'm briefly going to go through the points of the resolution just so the public can hear them. I'd ask for your approval. Amber does a great job of setting up like a little site where people can go on and put pictures of their teacher from their high school days or their kindergarten teacher and talk about why they were so wonderful. And they are kind of inspiring to read. I go through every year and read them and try and post one myself. So it says, whereas the Governing Board of Sahuarita Unified School District believes that we've all had special teachers that made a significant difference in our lives, and whereas the Sahuarita Unified School District Governing Board recognizes that those teachers demonstrated unique skills, allowing them to transform their deep content knowledge into life-changing student learning, and whereas the Sahuarita Unified School District Governing Board highly values the caring family culture created by these teachers, and whereas the Sahuarita Unified School District Governing Board understands that we often do not fully understand and recognize the profound influence teachers have on our future until we've lived our future, and whereas the Sahuarita Unified School District Governing Board realizes the importance of taking time to fully recognize the legendary teachers in our lives, therefore be it resolved that the Sahuarita Unified School District Governing Board does hereby affirm its support for September 22, 2022 as Legendary Teacher Day. We encourage our entire community to take time on this day and contact the legendary teacher in your life and express your gratitude for the difference that they made in your life. And I don't think any of us would argue with that. I'd recommend your approval of this resolution as it's presented.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay. All right, new business personnel, transportation wage adjustments, transportation services wage adjustment. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, President Reese, members of the board and public. You know, these days when people ask me, how's the year going? I usually say it's one of the best starts to the year. It's also one of the most challenging. But it's one of the most challenging because we're operating in something we love, the normal school experience, but stuff has changed. And I know it's not a very technical term, but stuff has changed. And I think part of the challenge is that some of those factors are beyond our control. They cut across different sectors, aspects of life. They apply from sea to shining sea, but we're dealing with them in our own context. You know, we're striving for excellence and service in everything we do, but we're all aware of the different issues, logistics, supply chains, and of course, staffing. Many of us probably have had the experience of flying in a commercial airliner in the last year or so, and maybe needing to plan for an extra day or two because you might get stuck, or you know, had yourself or a loved one in a hospital where they're struggling to take care of service with significantly reduced staffing, or even trying to get somebody to come fix something in your house where you need a skilled tradesman and all the contractors and service providers are short on those people. So I think we all understand that. We've worked really hard, and I'm really proud of the things we've done. Bless you. The things we've done to try and manage in this complicated space. I mean, people are rolling up their sleeves, doing whatever it takes to make sure that classrooms are operating as close to normal, that activities are going on, that we're finding creative solutions to the problems that we face. And like I said, there are unique situations that emerge that despite our best efforts, our multifaceted efforts, they're just creating kind of a unique and an acute and kind of a pressing challenge. And such is the case with student transportation services. You know, as we all, I think, know, student transportation is not a required service, educational service in the state of Arizona. However, I think historically, it's been something that we all remember. I remember riding the school bus. I think it's something that we all appreciate, we take for granted. It's a part of the culture, if you will, the norms of the school experience. And we are proud and honored to have a safe, a quality fleet, dedicated professional school bus drivers and mechanics, technicians, office staff, leadership. And we've always valued our delivery of that service. However, like everybody else, we've come to a point where despite all of these efforts, the recruiting efforts, the training efforts, the marketing efforts, we all remember the Project Roar. We roared and we consolidated as much as we can. And yet we came to the point where the margins have become so thin that the risks of continuing to do it how we've always done it outweigh the benefit of trying to hold the line and do everything we've always done. So we have to, first of all, face the reality. My biggest fear is that in our efforts to deliver the same level of service, because we're just focused on doing it, that we might leave some child at a bus stop because at the last minute somebody calls out and there's nobody to jump on the bus and to go take care of that route. So as much as it pained me to acknowledge that and then to react to that, we've had to make some accommodations. And I'm framing the recommendation this evening in the broader context because none of this stuff is really in isolation. It's in a broader picture. So what we are doing, and this is all just administratively, it's rolling, it's in place. Yeah, it's rolling. No pun. We are creating what are called rolling suspensions. There aren't a lot of options. I was reading an article in Education Week, which is a national publication. Everything we're facing and doing is, I would say, is happening in the not just the majority, but the super majority of districts in the United States. All of these factors, and there aren't a lot of easy solutions. There are different ones, but we've looked at them. And the one that we have settled on, just because it's the best of a not very good situation, is to implement rolling suspensions. Basically what that means is between now and foreseeably the fall break, we're going to take 5 routes each week and pull them out of circulation. We're going to go dark with them each week, and we're going to rotate them. And the idea for that is that it allows us to manage those expectations, to control our reality within our available resources, to basically adapt, and to operate within what we have available. So that means that foreseeably, every week, 43 of the 48 routes will operate as normal. And everybody will have to take a week where they don't have bus transportation. But it will allow us to deliver more predictable, more reliable, more consistent service on all of those other weeks for everybody. Another thing that it does, and I've had conversations with parents about this already this week, because this really did come up at the last minute, is that most people get it, but the notice is really important. So we're trying to give more timely notification so that people know as soon as possible, when is my week? So I can plan for that. And the other thing it does is it shares the sacrifice. One of the things I heard just in people's efforts to try and find solutions, I've heard, well, if we got routes A, B, C, and D that don't have a driver, why don't you just cancel those routes? Then, of course, that means that those routes every week are dark. So what this does is it creates a little bit of burden and sacrifice for everybody so that nobody has to bear it all. And it gives us time to recover. So this is it's temporary. It's part of a bigger issue. We've got to do more, even in a time where some things are beyond our control. So we are working at additional recruitment, marketing, messaging. I am pleased to say that we currently have 2 new candidates, recruits, if you want to call them that, in the pipeline. Of course, it takes time. It's part of the uniqueness of this position. The specialization, the safety training, the behind the wheel, the number of hours, the licensing from the state, it takes time. I think it takes several weeks. But we're getting more in the pipeline. So we're looking at everything. I mean, we're reading all this stuff. What are people doing? And one of the things that was an epiphany for me, well, it's an epiphany in this situation. We know, I've said it often, that money's not everything, but it is something. And from a competitive marketplace situation, we need to be competitive. And when I was looking at, okay, what's the recent updates, I was kind of shocked because it didn't used to be like this even 2 or 3 years ago. But I looked at the comparables. Scott provided me the comparables of the districts in our area, and I look at what we pay our school bus drivers in comparison to some of our peers around here, and we were in the dollars per hour behind. We were, I'm sad to say, at the bottom of the barrel. And so we said, well, this is not going to solve the problem, but we need to do something to make it as comparable as we can with our peers so that we can be on parity, we can compete, we can keep the good people that we have. Right now we're staffed for 60 bus drivers. We have about 40. And the ones that we have, I met with them today, they are true blue, focused, committed. They are mission-oriented people. And it's only fair with that kind of a gap that we bring them up to affirm them. And frankly, they should be comparable to our peers in the neighboring districts. And we need to keep them here. And the other thing it gives Mike Fiesler, our transportation director, is it gives them a recruiting tool. Again, it's one of many things. We offer a lot in our environment, in our support, in our professional development, in our community, where people might want to be here. But if it's that much of a gap, it might be the difference between losing somebody and keeping them, and in our ability to recruit somebody that would like to be here but can't justify the gap. So based on all of that and all of those considerations, what I'm proposing this evening, and I've already processed it with Lizette, our CFO, is we have limited funds. Thankfully, through resourceful budgeting, our budget is in a healthy state. But we also have a lot of variables at play here. We've got growth that is, as we budgeted, by the way, we budgeted for 2%. We're at like 2.6, but it's not a whole bunch more than what we budgeted to start more spending. We also have some classes that are still too big, and we've made some changes. We might need to make more. As we grow, we may need to expand positions, not only this year, but in the coming years. We know that there's uncertainty in the housing market. We know interest rates are going up. We don't like to use the word recession, but it's thrown out. So we just have to be ready for all this. But we looked at that, and given the urgency of this and the broader picture, we think this was an investment that we have to make. And this is not going to hit the ball out of the park. It's just going to put us on parity with our peers. Granted, this will move us toward the upper echelon of, at least right now, of where our peers are. And so my recommendation is to move the wages per hour for our transportation services personnel, the people with the commercial driver's license and the school bus driver endorsement, up to $18.20. This is an increase of $3 per hour from what it is today. And before I formally close my motion and stop talking and ask you to consider it, I just want to put a piece of context to it. I will also be writing a notice to all staff members and really reinforcing something that I believe near and dear, is that as an entire community, we are working harder than we've ever worked. We are working together. We are dedicated to this sole mission of helping every student succeed and fulfill the promise of their potential. And it is really hard work, and we are committed to, as a next step, to identifying, to solidifying some of these budgetary variables so that we know how much money we can designate for additional compensation. Remember, the board provided all employees a flat amount that was almost about a 5% raise or more, a little less for some. But we are committed this fall to providing additional compensation to all other employees to the extent that we have available and in the manner in which we can provide it based on the available resources. And we're gonna convey that to all of our employee team members. We are really all going forward arm in arm together. We will start going to do outreach to all the schools. So we'll be talking to them personally as well about these and other current issues, as we're very pleased to be able to do again, to get out and engage with folks. But I wanted to stress that because although this is clearly an urgent issue that I believe strongly we need to take right now, it's part of a bigger picture of how we're going to deploy the resources that we have to support and take care of all of our people, also not just through wages, but also through appropriate staffing so they can do their jobs at the highest level possible as we receive more students in various programs and needs, and so that we can plan for the future in a way that's going to keep the district viable and solid and financially sound and growing. So after having said all of that, my specific recommendation this evening is to make an adjustment in the wages of the transportation services personnel, and to raise that wage to $18.20 per hour, which is an increase of $3 per hour. That is the recommendation.
We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yes, may I ask, well, that, just want to clarify, is this going to create a K level on, another wage level on the wage scale? So right now, like J or something as the top, K will move, it'll create a new one specifically for that. Okay. So the whole, so everybody within the I, roughly the I category, will move up. Okay. That was actually going to be our next question. What about the other people in there? I think they all are: bus driver, chief, clerk of transportation, dispatcher, driver, safety, and compliance coordinator, which I think all of them are required to be licensed and maintain that license because they're the backup.
Yes.
Well,
Right.
and the fact of the matter today, Dr. Sparks, is that they're part of the front lines.
Well, that was why I was
That's the
asking.
scary part.
So-
of it. Yeah,
That's
that there is no back.
We're going to move all the backup ones up too, because they drive pretty much
Yes.
every day right now, from
Yes.
what I understand. So
That's correct.
okay, so that whole group will move up
Yes.
to K.
We have no backup.
Okay.
Our backup
Thank
is driving.
Full time. Right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to new business consent agenda. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, President Reese. Members of the board, you have a list of consent items that are allowed by law to be considered in one comprehensive motion. And at this time, I do recommend approval of the consent agenda in its entirety.
We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion?
Just applaud the Roadrunners PTO $13,500,
Amazing.
for the Wrightson playground. So thank you very much for that hard work, and thank you, community, for supporting them.
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Possible future agenda considerations. Is there anything that needs to be considered in the future from any board member? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. We'll establish the next board meeting to be held September 14th, 2022, here in the Sahuarita District Auditorium, 350 West Sahuarita Road, building number 21, Pod B. And any details can be found on our website. There's no executive session this evening, so we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you for joining us
Thank
this
you.
evening. Have a great evening.